Right. Well, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share about this training. I've gone through this training before with other groups, and it seemed to be pretty effective. So we're going to be talking a little bit about emotional intelligence, and I frame it from the lens of precision. So emotional precision, emotional intelligence in the workplace, what that could look like, some tools or some processes that you can use when you're in a situation that might be confusing or difficult with other staff or with clients, among colleagues, ways to look both internally and externally. So we're looking at an emotive-based needs model. Emotive vagueness or emotions can be very vague, and conflict can be very common. It can be a common issue found among most clinicians and among staff. So I'm going to review simple step-by-step model sometimes how to alleviate this kind of issue. So this information is going to be easily replicated in various settings and various dynamics. It doesn't just have to exist solely in this one dimension of your life with work. It can be replicated in other areas of life. So communication can do a lot of different things. It can buy time. It can help process emotion. It can direct or redirect or de-escalate situations with people when we need it to. So the approach I'm going to be looking at is a more defined process of communication that you might find. And the key word there is defined. We're looking for definition in the situations and the emotions that we're feeling. I have a quote here by John Gottman. Researchers have found that even more than IQ, your emotional awareness and abilities to handle feelings will determine your success and happiness in all walks of life. Success can be defined in a lot of different ways to many different people. What you define as success or a successful life or successful workplace is a subjective definition. It can be defined very differently for other people. When we're looking at emotional intelligence, we can focus on a handful of categories. You can see them here in this slide: self-awareness, managing relationships, social awareness. So that's where we kind of see the difference there of the internal self versus the external world, our self-awareness, and then our social awareness. Improving empathy, and developing new skills. Jay Friedman said emotional intelligence is a way of recognizing, understanding, and then choosing how we want to think, how we feel, and how we act. It shapes our interactions with others and our understanding of ourselves. So research suggests it's responsible for as much as 80% of the success in our lives. Again, that definition of what we've defined as successful or beneficial or helpful. So going through the different categories of emotional intelligence, we'll start with relationship management. This deals with the continued interactions that we have of day-to-day relationship building blocks. It's the bond that we build with others over time. A lot of times I look at the concept of trust. How do we build trust? It's consistency over frequency over time. Can I be reliable and consistent with people? Do what I say I'm going to do. Stick to my word over and here. It's time to build that trust. So it relies on self-awareness, knowing myself, what's going on in my mind, in my world. It also relies on emotional self-management. Can I manage all the different moods or shifts or emotions that I'm experiencing throughout the day? And a sense of social awareness. Am I able to read the room? And am I able to read and better understand specifically what a person is going through? So we use relationship management to navigate conversations, we navigate conflicts, sometimes even these subconscious negotiations that we might have in our own mind to try to sort things out. Many more. With emotional self-regulation, this is the act of managing our emotions in order to control our impulsive feelings and behaviors. We may feel a certain way, or we may feel like we want to respond in a certain way. So emotional self-regulation is understanding the emotion and then knowing what to do with it so we can control the response. Knowing that it's there for a reason, but then beginning to define how do we want to redirect, or manage this emotion? What do we want to do with it? It's not always a negative or difficult or problematic experience. It can actually be an opportunistic experience to managing the scenario or the situation, the conflict. Social awareness, this is the ability to understand the emotions, needs, and concerns of others. You might have team, a large staff, and each one of them is going to carry not just the skills or the output or input that they put into the workplace, but they're also carrying with them what they went through that morning, what they went through that evening, the struggles that they're having in other domains of life. We hired the individual, and so we get the holistic individual. We're not just getting one piece of the person that comes into work. We're getting the fullness of a human being. So our ability to be aware of our own identity, how we're perceiving whatever projection or emotion the person has or the team has, and then what they're experiencing. So others' identities. What part of their identity are they struggling with putting out? Self-awareness, this is the ability to recognize and understand our own emotion. And also the impact that this emotion is going to have on our life and have on the people around us. Oftentimes we may feel like this emotion is mine, it's mine to own, and I'll deal with it. Meaning when we define management or managing emotion, we think I just have to close off what I'm going through, be 100% professional, keep it all inside, and not let it get to me or get it to others. When really, that kind of fosters up bitterness. It begins to grow more and more. The more incongruent ourselves are, the more difficulty we begin to have. So if we have our real self and our idealized self, the more they split apart, the more we have that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of scenario happening. So looking through an emotions-based, needs-based model, you're looking at behavior versus the need. And this is all familiar language we've all heard as clinicians. Being able to see past just what's in front of us and understanding the need behind our staff, need behind certain patterns, need behind our colleagues, what's happening today that they're struggling with to see this response that they're going through. So the majority of maladaptive behavior is a response to meet, or a response or attempt to meet a very real need. The need exists. It's our responsibility to kind of learn the person to understand it. So if this is true, if we really believe that, then our lens must change from just simply observing the behavior or the message to understanding and then translating what the need is. So this is where most clinicians and staff get stuck. Does one actually translate a need? We get in this kind of routine, we show up to work, we're doing our job. Everything else is chatter, or we feel like everything else just needs to be chatter or put on the wayside. So how do we, when it does become problematic or a pattern or a bigger issue, how do we look past the behavior and actually figure out what the need is? I know in past sessions today, we've learned a little bit about empathy and building skills through empathy and being compassionate. So this is right along the same dialogue that we're coming from a lens of empathy and trying to explore new skills. So with our clients and maybe in certain agencies, we know that a quick way or direct way to source out needs is through a type of assessment, maybe like a DLA 20 or some sort of assessment that really gets to the root cause of what we're seeing. Others might have policies in place, like with HR, talking about this is how, step-by-step approach to work through various obstacles. But these things sometimes can be difficult to find or explore or implement like right on the spot, to administer right on the spot. So we want to use an approach that focuses more on emotive language. Through clarifying questions, we can use maybe an emotions wheel. I'm not saying to lug around a little emotions wheel, but to really understand what all the various specific emotions exist. To move the person from a place of confusion, to move our own self from a place of confusion, or a place of vagueness, to a place of precise emotions language. So we want to listen for that emotion dialogue. We want to reflect on what level that emotion the person might be stuck with or that we're stuck with. I have just an example here on this slide. We've all seen an emotions wheel before. I like to put it this way, that often we walk around every day just existing in these basic categories. We're happy, sad, angry, disgusted, fearful, bad, surprised. And we get stuck in just these basic emotions filtering from one to the other. If we're in that area, if we're in that category of one of these basic emotions, that's as basic as our resolutions are going to be. So that's a key thing to take from this, is that if we are just seeing the behavior from a basic lens, oh, this person is angry, they are maybe disgruntled, either they look upset, or their behavior is bad, it's not good for the workplace. If we are just that basic, then our resolutions are only going to be as effective as our understanding of the problem. So living in big emotions can be tiring. It's never really being able to put words onto what is really going on with the essence of what's happening. So sad, anger, mad, sometimes just don't cut it. We want to review these precise emotions. What is it that you're experiencing today that you are disconnected from our staff meeting? What is it that you're feeling or going through? Because this is kind of outside of your personhood or personality. There is this age-old idea that you leave a portion of yourself at home and you just put your best self at work. And while some of that might be effective in regards to skill implementation, it's simply not true. Again, we've hired the full person. So the full person is showing up. There's no way to tell someone to be autonomous, like a robotic being that just doesn't feel emotion. Emotion is going to be present in the workplace. It could either be ignored, and the pattern will continue of things that you see among yourself, colleagues, and staff, or it can be processed, worked through, not necessarily from a lens of like a therapeutic exchange, but through the performance improvement process, many of the steps that HR was discussing earlier today. So this is the movement we want to get to. We're moving from basic emotion and basic understanding to specific understanding. And it revolves around relationship building, revolves around building that narrative. So landing on these emotions, we get a better sense of the need. And here's how we can do it. We look at the opposite. If I look here and I know that this individual is angry and they've expressed to me that they're feeling maybe critical or that they're being criticized, maybe their defense mechanisms are flaring up, and they feel like they've been dismissed. Like that we as the supervisor, as the colleague, have simply dismissed them. That is wonderful information, wonderful data to have. Now, with that specific nature in mind that they experience dismissiveness, or their perception or feeling is that of dismissiveness, we know that perhaps they're needing, or we can provide the opposite of dismissiveness. Concentrated, focused, one-on-one time, taking into account their input, really giving some space and time for understanding. And you can do the same process with any of these specific emotion categories by simply defining the opposite and having that collaborative conversation. This also works not just for the external world, like we're talking about with social awareness, but internally. Man, today, maybe I don't have anything bad going on in other domains of life, but as soon as I step foot, into my office, I'm just feeling a certain way. I can't pinpoint it, and I know it's going to wear off. I know it's going to, showcase onto other people. I can take a quick second. I can explore what specific emotion it is and try to kind of sort out or work through a process, or even talk to the supervisor and say, this is where I'm at. Maybe I can talk through some things real quick. So as an aside, this is by no means anyone's responsibility, but it is a tool that can be utilized and can be passed on. This process is a great door opener for Erickson's stages of development. So on that person's own time or on your own time, if you're seeing a pattern of those emotions among your teams or among a certain person, you might find a theme of emotions and relate them back to a virtue on Erickson's stages that might be lacking. And from there, you could better understand the conflict or even the origin of the issue. That's not something that you necessarily do as a team or as a supervisor to a clinician, but it is a tool that can be provided to someone with some basic understanding of what it is and how to go through it. Erickson's stages are really helpful to identify various virtues throughout age ranges and to try to see which ones do we struggle in. If an individual often has a lot of defense mechanisms flare up as responses to any sort of critique, there may be some difficulty in the area or virtue of competence, feeling inadequate with their sense of competence or the task at hand. Not necessarily that they can't do it, but they feel like they can't. It's not our role to really dive deeper into what happened in their school age from 6 to 12, but even the mere fact of having a chart or having something available or having the time and space available to learn about what competence is or talk about feeling inadequate is a great place of growth, a great place of exponential growth rather than being static and ending the conversation. So there are two planes of experience that exist in these sort of emotionally charged scenarios, or just when we're talking about emotions in general, these types of dialogues. We're looking at the logic plane. There is very much a reasoning-based plane that we're existing in, as well as the emotional plane. So the logical plane, this is details, schedules, tasks, reasoning. This is a lot of times when we start our sentence by "I think," or "this should be," or "this ought to be this way or that way." The emotional plane, this is how we're physiologically, our body is responding to these elements. This is how our body is responding emotionally, sending our chemical messengers to our brain to try to make sense and meaning of the scenario, our workplace, our career, our identity. This means that when we are given a task, or when we have a deadline, we're not merely experiencing that on a logical plane. There's also an emotional response that's being had. Some individuals, that emotional response might be so debilitating that they have symptoms of anxiety simply by having something delegated to them. That might be a very real scenario. By understanding that we exist on both these planes at any given point, we can navigate both of them. We can navigate the emotional plane. We can better communicate with and better equip our staff and our teams to say, yes, we all understand logically what the task is, what the specific nature is, what the detail is, what the request is. Here's the emotional response that we all have to it. Maybe they had a supervisor before and they've really lacked that trust with their supervisor or with their agency or with whatever, and they aren't quite processing through or able to get to that point. That might be information you would have never known or come across without that emotional dialogue. So examples. This is a part where we can kind of interact a little bit and think through about how this sits with you. So here's an example. I have to get these reports completed by tomorrow. So imagine you're saying that to yourself or a supervisor's telling you, these reports, they need to be done by tomorrow. I have to get these reports completed by tomorrow. So we think to ourselves, what kind of emotion could be housed in this sort of statement? As simple as it is, what sorts of emotions might a person go through when they hear that kind of statement? A person might feel a sense of urgency. And maybe they've never responded to urgency well in their life. Maybe they've never responded to being given such a direct task or something that actually carries responsibility of that weight or that nature. That, hey, these reports are actually maybe going to impact a handful of people's lives. That's why we need it so quickly. This may be the very first time that they've been able to handle or maintain this type of sensitive information. So there can be a lot of different emotions that go through a person's life. The opposite could be true. Maybe they've been in the workplace for so long that this is just another task. And now there's a lack of meaningfulness. Don't really care too much about this. I'm just going to check mark it and be done. The task may have been completed. Great. Input, output, completed. But is that really what we're going for in regards to having a workplace and a team that's passionate about their work, that finds meaningfulness in their career? So this meeting needs to have delegated, another example here, this meeting needs to have delegated tasks assigned by the time it's over. By the time we're done with this meeting, we need to have these tasks delegated. Again, there could be a lot of different things that are felt or experienced with a statement like that. A lot of things that you can hear in that statement. You don't intend for it, but you also don't know how people might be taking these things from an emotional place. Simon Sinek is a very well-known modern-day contemporary in our field. And he says that empathy is about being concerned about the human being and not just about their output. You can have a stellar staff that do a great ton of output. meeting all the check boxes, but they might be burnt out. They might lack, that connectivity, lack that cohesion as a team, and then over time you get a high turnover rate or rotation of staff, and things just don't really work out too well. So I like what Simon Sinek says here, is that empathy is about being concerned about basically what we said earlier, the fullness of the human being that's present there with you, rather than just their output. So we want to look for and explore these emotions. By exploring precise emotional language, we can develop precise resolutions. We can think even in terms of those performance improvement plans that we discussed earlier, or even annual reviews. This type of approach provides great content for goal development. Through these conversations, a lot of content can then be built upon and be explored. I have a little tool here, just in regards to the way we use words and the way we present this kind of dialogue, changing from a place of toxic positivity to then using more support and validation, rather than, hey, we'll get over it soon. This is an obstacle in the road, but we'll get over it. Instead, we could say something that's more accepting and supportive and validative. Hey, we've survived hardships before. I believe in this team. I believe in you. That's a little bit more supportive and validating. Just be positive. Just be positive. Another way, more effective way to say it is, I know it's difficult. Right now, things can easily go wrong. That is true. But let's think about what can go right. Much different redirected approach of energy. Stop being negative all the time. Whether that's said jokingly or very direct, more effective ways, it's okay if you're feeling negative right now. That is a very real emotion. However, right now, it doesn't really need to define our workplace. It doesn't need to define our whole workplace, our whole day. Just think happy thoughts. Instead, we could look at, it's all right if you are positive and happy at the moment. Let's feel you're free to feel your emotions and let it pass naturally. Never quit, never give up, ever. That's not technically true. There are times when sometimes you have to let go of a certain project or restart a certain project or try a different intervention with a client, so we have to be realistic. Don't talk about what's wrong. Number 9 over here, don't talk about what's wrong. Just forget it and stay positive. Instead, hey, you can tell me what you're going through. I'm here to listen. Opening up as many of those opportunities for listening and working through things. Get rid of negativity. That's another one here, number 13. No, not necessarily. Difficulty is part of life. Pain, suffering, all that's part of life. It makes us stronger, helps us grow. If it is too overwhelming, there are steps in place. You can connect it to certain things if you need them in your life. Again, we're looking at the whole person, even in the workplace. So emotional intelligence is a set of skills that will benefit us in all our aspects of life. It's going to help us strengthen our relationships and achieve our career, our personal goals, whether that's internally or externally, how we respond to the world. We talked about the key 4 skills. We talked about self-awareness, enabling us to better understand ourselves and the behavior, how it impacts others. We looked at emotional self-management, how that enables us to control our impulse behaviors and manage our emotions in healthy ways. Social awareness, allowing us to see the perspective of others and empathize from those different backgrounds and individuals who identify differently than ourselves. The relationship management, using our proficiency in the 3 other skills to help us inspire and influence others to build stronger bonds. I do have a link here, which I can connect with you and give that to you if you'd like at some point, to the full module. This full module gives video examples and other ways, other practices. I didn't give a real long intro at the beginning, so I'm a performance improvement specialist preferred. I'm a licensed therapist, and that's a little bit about me. If you'd like to learn a bit more, I am on LinkedIn. You can have that as well. Thanks for taking some time to go through this today. And I think, Alex, you said that there's some time at the end for questions and answers.
Yes, definitely. What questions and comments do we have, guys? I know I'll start. I loved that wheel the words and saying that if you really only say, like, understand those basic, that's so interesting. Such an interesting concept. That if you stay right there in the middle, you're never going to fully understand what's going on with somebody. It was very interesting. Angelica says, love the toxic positivity phrases versus the supportive phrases. Yes. And we've all heard those, and when you get told that, how disheartening it is. But then we all kind of still say it to each other. We've got to get those out there.